What's up, YouTube? Right along with us as we make our way to McCarthy, Alaska, and then to the awesome Kennicott Mine.
We don't need a destination, let's go where the river's taking us.
The adventure really begins here in Chitina, where you leave the Edgerton Highway and start on the McCarthy Road, which is 60 miles of gravel before you get to McCarthy. This gravel road follows the original railbed of the now defunct Copper River and Northwestern Railway, and it utilizes the original Cuscalana Bridge, which was built in 1910. The road is not very well maintained to McCarthy. It has quite a few potholes and quite a bit of washboards, but we've seen everything from regular passenger cars to Class A motorhomes while we were there. If you don't mind a little bit of rough road, the scenery is absolutely beautiful. Before you reach the mine of Kennicott, you're going to find yourself in the town of McCarthy. McCarthy was built just a few years after the Kennicott mine was established. The mine of Kennicott didn't allow things like alcohol or prostitution, so that was part of the reason McCarthy became alive. A lot of the original structures are still here in McCarthy, along with a lot of the older original vehicles, and that same free spirit is also alive and well. There are a couple different ways to get on up to Kennicott. Sadly enough, this old Ford is not one of them. We chose to ride the shuttle bus up to Kennicott rather than taking a bike ride or even an e-bike. After the 5 mile or so ride up by the shuttle, we were met at Kennicott with incredible views of the mountains and of the glacier rolling just off the hill from where the Kennicott mine is. We wanted to do just a little bit more than walk around this. We wanted to truly explore it, so we signed up for the concentration meal tour.
I like to start our tour by looking at the glaciology and the geology of the region here. So what we have down before us there, that's the Kennicott Glacier. Kennicott Glacier is about 27 miles long and about 3 to 5 miles wide. So, luckily enough, we can see Mount Blackburn today. The true summit is actually just above the clouds on your left, or on the left of that other little higher bump. So Blackburn's about 16,390 feet tall. That's where the Kennicott Glacier starts.
The first part of the tour takes you through some of these beautifully preserved and renovated buildings and tells you a lot of the history about the area.
So ultimately, the mill started being constructed in 1905. The railroad ultimately was completed in 1911, and by that time they had already milled enough copper to send it right back down to Cordova. And then the bottom 2 floors were their common areas. So their mess hall, cafeteria, lounge.
Our tour guide was really good. He had a lot of factual information and took us through several of these buildings. As cool as all of these old structures were, the highlight of this trip was being able to see all 14 stories of the magnificent mill. We can't wait to show you that. The drafting office here was one that had been renovated, and it was kind of a museum of sorts. You could really step back in time, look at how everything was set up and how everything was done, and there was a whole lot of other artifacts in here as well. After checking out all those structures down below, we made the climb 14 stories up to the top where we began the tour of the concentration mill.
So the blue streaks in this sample are azurite, and the light green streaks in this sample are called malachite. And those two examples of the copper are about 2 to 5% pure copper. And it's all encased in a limestone ore sample. So this sample here was what was sent through this entire mill process. They crushed it up, they sorted it, and they ultimately stacked it.
The copper ore that came through this mill came from several locations throughout the mountains behind the mill. The mines that it came from were the Erie, the Jumbo, the Mother Lode, the Bonanza, and the Glacier. They were able to get the ore to the mill by tramways and through haulage tunnels. The mill is 14 stories high, and it's literally bolted to the side of the mountain. It was built between 1909 and 1923. As the ore made its way from the top to the bottom of the mill, it would be crushed up into smaller and smaller fines, separating the ore from the limestone. As the ore made it closer to the bottom, it was smaller and smaller and would go through separation tables. And once it got to the bottom of there was still some ore that was left, and they actually done a chemical leaching process to further get the rest of the ore out of the limestone. To be able to walk through this mill and be able to see how things were done 100 years ago was really cool. To be able to see all the machinery that they had built and put together on the side of this mountain and so far away from every other civilization.
Windows. I imagine none of your homes have a floor like this. But this was one of those floors that they needed to add to machines, so they just put the floor in wherever. Didn't worry about the windows because it wasn't relevant to their operation.
Nice work.
Like a pro.
You could use it like a fireman's thing.
Slide right down there.
Slide right down in there.
You should.
This floor, along with there would be one right here too. These vibrating screens. Tables convex, and they kind of sit on each other like that and grind the ore down to a finer dust part. Inside there are two drums that are sitting like this, and they would turn in on themselves with the ore feeding in the middle where the chute leads to. That was used to adjust the distances of the two drums inside this trailer rolling mill. Ways that try to mitigate the building damage from these vibrations is that they make more money. They move those through crushers on the floors, a couple above. miles ago. The salt that's in the chute with our yellow and black line now. So that might have been there for one reason or another, and then they decided to scrap whatever was there initially. And available around there for unsupervised. But for the most part, it's all still
By this point, we were making it towards the bottom levels. And I've got to tell you, out of all the tours that we've done, this was by far the most in-depth and the most interesting tour that we've done at any national park. If you're ever in Alaska, this is definitely a place that you've got to go check out. Thank you all so much for riding with us back in time. And until next time, see ya.